Hello everyone, Fantasy Girl back in action and welcome back to another discussion video. I've been doing a lot of these lately and I'm thinking that maybe I have time for one or two more before the showcase next Friday. So as for today, I decided to look more into the plan. Yes, the plan that Fandaniel and Zenos seem to be plotting for the recreation of the final days. So this next part is just going to be a quick recap of what we know so far, and just in case you've forgotten it for some particular reason. So if you haven't played up to this point, especially since there are going to be spoilers, watch at your own risk. So by the end of Stormblood, Zenos was originally thought to have been killed by his own hand, but apparently because of his artificial echo, he was able to somehow survive and his soul took over the body of a nearby resistance soldier. Eventually, though, he was able to find his way back to Garlemald where he confronted his father and Elidibus, who was walking around in his body. Long story short, Zenos battled against Elidibus and won his body back, and then immediately killed his father, thus putting an end to the Black Rose poison, and he just didn't want to risk his father getting in his way for ruining his hunt with the Warrior of Light. Afterwards, as he's watching the Empire all but destroy themselves trying to find a new leader, an Ascian approaches him, a being by the name of Fandaniel who is using Ashahi's body, who, if you recall, had a serious obsession with Zenos before. Now, we don't know exactly what kind of deal was struck between the two of them, but Fandaniel approached him offering to become his hunting dog. Since then, we've only seen a few glimpses of him with Zenos, but it's not until the end of 5.4 where we're properly introduced to him and we find out that he's trying to recreate the final days. Which, as I'm sure you remember, basically he's trying to bring about the end of the world and he wants to do it in style, apparently. So, he seems to have been the one responsible for creating these mysterious black towers scattered throughout Eorzea and even reaching as far as Yangxia. We don't know what these towers are for, what they are intending to do, other than the fact that they are playing a role in the final days. But whatever it is, it can't be good. All that we know for sure is that he created these towers, probably through creation magic, as well as created the strange beast that he dubs Lunar Bahamut, and showed up with a very deadly threat to the Alliance and to the Warrior of Light, where he proclaims that with the Unsundered dead, he is now free to live out his ambitions of destroying the world and everyone in it. So basically, us slaying the three Unsundered Ascians may have just made things worse, but what are we to do about it? Just what the heck are they planning? Well, this is going to be a quick discussion of what I think that they might be up to and just what we might be expecting from their plan, as well as seeing who will betray who. Now, this is going to be just a lot of speculation and guesswork for the most of it, so take from it what you can and let me know what you think. So, the first thing we need to talk about is the fact that while Fandaniel is a powerful Ascian, his power pales in comparison to someone like Emix or Elidibus because he's still sundered. And if you remember just what it took in order to defeat those two, that really gives you kind of a difference in power. Still, just because he's not as powerful as Emix was, that does not make him any less of a threat. He is still powerful enough to seemingly have created his Lunar Bahamut out of nothing. And what about the towers? I'm guessing that he must have created those too, especially with how quickly they appeared. And then there's Zenos. I mean, what's he planning on getting out of all of this? Well, for the first part, let's get the towers out of the way there, what I think with those things and what they're for. For the towers themselves, I have two different theories about them. One of which is that they are there to try to dry the land of all of its ether. I mean, if you look at them, you see that strange light, and I'm pretty sure that that's ether. It seems to emanate this ether to create maybe more monsters like the Lunar Bahamut, which will cause more fear and panic when all of these monsters are just coming out of nowhere, and basically that just leads to the whole world just freaking out while these monsters basically destroy the world. While that's possible, I don't think that's the case, mostly because of this one scene near the end where we see the resistance soldier returning after investigating the tower. where he looks like he has become some kind of tempered minion to somehow worship either the Empire of Galamal itself or the Emperor. Now that I see these, I can't help but think of the Lunar Cry, the name of the cataclysmic supernatural phenomenon, and it plays a major role in Final Fantasy VIII. This event is where creatures of the moon, monsters, fall to Earth at regular intervals. It was said in that game that the monsters that appeared can cause significant damage, enough to destroy entire nations. So, I mean, if this is going by that same logic, then we already have a way to kind of destroy the world without even trying. So it kind of seems to me that's what's happening here. I mean, not exactly the same way, maybe, but if you remember from Final Fantasy VIII, the sorceress sealed up inside the moon, if I seem to recall that correctly. And basically, she was eventually set free, thanks to her own hand kind of manipulating everything, but she was eventually set free and able to cause all sorts of damage, especially with time compression. So it could be that we are heading towards something like that. I mean, I don't think it would be exactly like that, but I can definitely see them inspired by that particular idea. So here's what I think is happening here, especially if it turns out that 6.0 is the ending for the story of Hydaelyn and Zodiark. It makes sense that we will be facing the risk of Zodiark appearing. The towers could be there to draw ether from the planet and just send it up to the moon, so that will power Zodiark. Maybe give him enough strength to break free, and maybe give Zenos the opportunity to fuse with him and to fight us. That part I'm not so sure of. But perhaps the towers hold some kind of defense to them, so that if anyone tries to put a stop to it or maybe get too close, they also become tempered based on the Empire and just to keep people away from it, and then just spread more fear and chaos because, I mean, look at the Empire. Since when is the Empire a good thing? Like, since when do we ever hear of the soldiers actually being good enough to help people? It's very rare. I mean, we do hear about some soldiers and how they defect and everything, and that's a good thing, but for the most part, whenever you hear about Garamal, hearing it just causes all sorts of pain and suffering. So perhaps those towers are there just to help continue to spread all of this fear, all of this uncertainty about what's happening in the future, and that only adds to the panic more. That only increases the fighting between Galamal and these other nations, especially with the Alliance. And by the time that Zodiark is awakened to a point that he can break free, we have everybody here so busy fighting each other that they're not even paying attention to Zodiark at first until he appears. Which also leads to Zenos. Maybe it's going to be his job in making things so unbearable in the Empire that we're going to be going there to basically save the people from themselves. Or perhaps more of a conquered territories begin rising up and we have to stem the flow of chaos to protect innocent civilians that are being caught in the crossfire. I'm kind of expecting the people to look to Zenos as their hero, because he is their crown prince and like their undefeated champion for the most part. I mean, he was defeated before, but yeah, I'm guessing a lot of people, at least specifically inside Galamal itself, they see Zenos as their, like, basically Superman. And that's not too far off a description, because, I mean, if you look at Asahi and how loyal, like, his own men were to Zenos, I mean, they were terrified of him, but they were so confident in his strength and power that they didn't think that he could ever lose. And so the Warrior of Light basically defeated their undefeated Superman. Keep in mind, that's only going for mostly the people inside of Galamal, maybe like some of the soldiers and everything, not to the other nations that have been forced under Galamal's rule. They probably see Zenos as like this undefeated demon more than anything, and like they look to the Warrior of Light as like their savior or something. But I'm guessing that the people inside the city itself of Galamal may come to see the Warrior of Light to be some kind of big bad villain from a distant land. Like, I think that would be cool to see people think of them as some sort of monster before the end of it, only to realize they were completely wrong. It's a stark contrast between the Warrior of Light and Zenos. They're basically foils to each other. Zenos is what the Warrior of Light would have become if they allowed themselves to lose all sense of empathy to the most part. However, the important thing we need to remember here is that if we want to stand a chance against Zodiark, we're going to need the Empire's help before this is through. That I'm convinced of. To do that, we first need to take care of Zenos and Fandaniel. But either way, I feel that their work will only play out so long as it's convenient for them. I don't think this is a matter of if they will betray each other, it's a matter of who will betray the other first. Zenos clearly has no interest in whatever Fandaniel is doing. He clearly knows the plan. He knows what's up, so... Now, Zenos, he clearly has no interest in whatever Fandaniel is planning. He is perfectly content to let Fandaniel do whatever he wants, and I think that's what Fandaniel really likes about Zenos, because he knows exactly what kind of a being that Zenos is. He knows that he doesn't care about anyone else. Like, he only cares about one thing, and that is his rematch with the Warrior of Light. And Zenos came out and pretty much admitted that. Like, he says he doesn't care whatever the final days are so long as he gets what he wants with the Warrior of Light. I think that the only way that he would actually put a stop to Fandaniel himself is if his plans interact with his plans of reuniting with his rematch with the Warrior of Light. He did threaten to kill Fandaniel when he heard about how he just singed them with his great introduction. That was the first time we really see Zenos put his foot down there. Whereas with Fandaniel, he's only too happy to be off the Unsunder's tight leash. I don't think that he would be too willing to be considered a mere servant to somebody, even if it is Zenos after all that. But that's just another reason in that Zenos lets him do whatever he wants as long as it doesn't jeopardize his showdown with his friend. Where I notice that Zenos doesn't refer to the Warrior of Light as his enemy anymore, he always calls them his friend now. Anyway, there's really no reason for Zenos to bother betraying him since he doesn't care about anything else. Even if it comes to the Empire possibly at risk at self-imploding upon itself, it's just a means to an end with him. But I think we may be underestimating how dangerous Fandaniel has the potential to become. I think that whatever deal he's made is like a deal with the devil, one that Zenos is only too happy to make. Now, controversial call here. The truth is, I really don't mind Zenos that much, at least not nearly so much as other people do. Is he my favorite villain? No, absolutely not. At this point, I am getting a little bit tired of him not really doing anything other than just seeing him just lord over his throne, just kind of brooding, like kind of obsessing over the Warrior of Light. I mean, I don't think that we can ever work together with him. I think he's just too far gone, like he's too far down that other spectrum for us to even consider working together. But I am holding out hope that the dev team, who must surely have heard about all the complaints about Zenos over the last few years, they might have something very special planned for him. At least that's what I'm hoping. Now, there have been so many people complaining about Zenos being so one-dimensional. Zenos, that we need to remember though, is the Warrior of Light's foil, so I think that's the point. Meaning his purpose in the story is to highlight the difference between him and the Warrior of Light, maybe even cause the Warrior of Light to take a different path. And that's what I think his whole purpose here is. If you think about it, the two are so different from each other. I know that the Warrior of Light's own backstory is kind of based off what the player wants or what they imagine, but basically, Zenos was a prince of Galmal, born into the most privileged houses imaginable, preternaturally gifted in every way, barely had to make any effort at all to improve on himself, got everything he ever wanted handed to him on a silver platter, has an artificial echo, and basically did whatever he wanted to become the bastard that we all know and love to hate. Whereas the Warrior of Light all but drifted into one of the random city-states at the beginning of the story with withered weapons and just the clothes on their backs, trained and worked hard for their strength little by little, does whatever they can to help others without ever expecting anything in return, with or without the echo. I mean, you can see how their battle has been hinted from the very beginning. Those two are exact opposites, and yet they're equal in every single other way. Either way, I don't mind Zenos sticking around at least for a while longer, but only if they're going to do something other than making him here as the main bad guy that we have to take down. Which I don't think he will be, at least for this new expansion. As for Fandaniel, it's hard to judge someone that you really know nothing about. We've had, what, like 5 or 6 scenes of him in total? And with about 10 minutes of screen time for him? I mean, I find the idea of an immortal who wants to die to be strangely fascinating, and I am curious to see what made him that way. When I think of him, I can't help but be reminded of Shuyan from Final Fantasy X-2. And I mean, I know some people rack on X-2, they say that it's a terrible game. I personally enjoyed it. It's one of the first Final Fantasy games I played anyway. Anyway, going back to Shuyan, he is basically a ghost who is trying to destroy the world, if you can believe that. He was someone who 1,000 years ago was forced to watch someone that he loved, the person he loved the most, die right in front of him, and he couldn't do anything to save them. And he spent centuries grieving over that loss, that basically he tried to destroy the world with a dangerous weapon. That's the same impression that I'm getting when I think of Fandaniel. Granted, we don't know his story was based on the death of someone that he loved, and that's what drove him to this. But I think that he, and by extension Zodiark, are going to be the main villains that we have to deal with in this new expansion. Also, I feel the need to point out that we've only seen Fandaniel's profile and not really any of the other Ascians. I made another video about the state of the Ascians that we know of so far, and there's still a handful of Ascians that are still unaccounted for. If you want to watch that real quick, it's down in the description below. So, what about these other remaining Ascians? What is their new take on their newfound freedom from the Unsundered? Sure, I mean, I can see a couple of them maybe joining forces with Fandaniel, or even going off on their own for their own plans, but I kind of like the idea of maybe another Ascian coming to us and giving us some information on what's going on because they disagree with whatever Fandaniel's planning. Otherwise, Fandaniel seems to be very likely he will turn on Zenos once he gets what he wants. But is going along with him because he knows that Zenos is his best chance of getting whatever his end goal is. This seems to be a plan that he's had for a long time, and I can completely see him just spending decades, if not centuries, going over this plan, especially once the Empire was fully built up. And if you remember, he had this plan seemingly in mind when he first approached Zenos. Given how surprised he was when he realized that the Unsundered are all gone, he felt that he could throw off the secrecy for the most part and be able to work more in the open without having Elidibus breathing down his neck anymore. Don't get me wrong, if he gets the chance, I think he would totally turn his back on Zenos if he feels that he has to. Zenos is just a tool to him, and he will not shed any tears if he has to throw him away if he has to. I mean, one thing I think that he might try to do is allow him to summon Zodiark to a point that Zenos will try to fuse together with him like he did with Shinryu, and maybe use some kind of means to control them both. I mean, Fandaniel came to Zenos knowing that he was looking for a powerful form to be able to do battle with the Warrior of Light, and he seemed truly interested in the idea that Zenos had been dreaming of the final days ever since he was young. Perhaps he feels that MXelk may have implanted something in Zenos that is the key to this, maybe even give him a way to control him. That part I highly doubt, though. I really don't think that Fandaniel is going to be able to control Zenos in any possible way. It could be that he's allowing Zenos to do whatever he wants because he knows that he's just going to create pure chaos. He knows that if he allows Zenos to kind of fuse together with Zodiark, and whatever else Zodiark may care about, I don't think he would really pay too much attention for, but he's still going to cause massive damage to basically the whole world, even if he does fuse together with Zodiark, and I think that kind of gets Fandaniel off on that idea. Now, these ideas are really based off the ideas that Fandaniel is inspired by other beings, such as how I talked about Shuyan, but also maybe Kefka from Final Fantasy VI and Kuja from Final Fantasy IX. Maybe we have a being who is either sees the pointlessness of life, or someone who can't stand the thought of allowing the world to exist without them. It could be that Fandaniel may have lived a wonderful life before his memories were forcibly returned to him by the other Ascians, and he sees that his perfect life was completely meaningless up till now, especially since he's now immortal and he witnessed all that he loved and cared for die slowly. I think that is setting up like a really good storyline, like really get us to know Fandaniel, like what is going on in his head, what makes him tick. But getting back to the main point of the story is that neither one of these two characters care for the other. They're only using each other as a means to an end. They both know that. I'm pretty sure that they both know that. They know that the other will most likely betray them if given half the chance, and I don't doubt that one of them will betray the other. Maybe both will end up betraying each other in a way, but really I don't think the other would mind, so long as they still get what they want in the end. I don't think that Zenos will feel compelled to kill Fandaniel, like I said, so long as his wishes are given to him at the end, even if that means he's being manipulated, and I think that it will work the other way around as well. Fandaniel wants to destroy the world. Zenos doesn't care about the world and lets him do whatever he wants and will only help him if it benefits him. I think the idea of the other Asians joining them or fighting against them may prove to be a more interesting idea though. And Zenos may be the one required to be the one who puts down the few remaining Asians that we have left as part of his deal with Fandaniel. Who knows? Maybe the only Asian left will be Fandaniel by the time we confront them. Or better yet, we get another Asian who comes to us for sanctuary because of Fandaniel's crazy plans and having Zenos basically kill off the rest of the convocation. I mean, if that does happen, it may be a choice of simply a matter of survival and really having no other choice but to go to the Warrior of Light and the Scions for protection. If they don't really mean all that, it could be perhaps they will be using that as a ruse in some way. Maybe they're secretly working with Fandaniel and they're secretly betraying us or leading us into a trap. Or maybe they're planning on using us to a point to get close enough to Fandaniel to maybe finish him off as well. I mean, it does seem really strange though that given one of the biggest points of Shadowbringers was not only to save the first, but also spare the source of an 8th Umbral Calamity. Now, thanks to us saving the first and the Black Rose having been destroyed, that is confirmed that we put a stop to that one future with the poison 8th Umbral era. That future has already been changed, so that future is no longer waiting for us. However, we've created a new future, like a new timeline. But that does not mean that we may not still be in store for an 8th Umbral Calamity, since the future that we thought of did not include Zenos returning, did not include the towers, a lunar Bahamut, or Fandaniel's crazy plans. I can't help but be drawn back to the quote spoken at the end of 5.3, however. Ferocious, ravenous, remorseless. Now, that is a clear reference to Zenos, no doubt in my mind. Now, it could also mean that Zenos is the beast that shall kindle the flames of the apocalypse as well, but I think that role may be more intended for Fandaniel. He's a being who works behind the shadows, the knife in the dark, whom we don't know anything else about. He's just patiently waiting for his plan to bring about the end of days, and it's nearly upon us. Anyway, everyone, thank you all so much for watching. What do you think about my theories? Do you think that it's possible that the two of them will end up betraying the other? If so, who do you think will betray the other first? Do you think that they'll both end up betraying each other at the same time? Definitely could happen. Do you think the other Asians may actually come to us for protection or for assistance in dealing with Fandaniel? Or what do you think about my ideas of the towers, of them secretly billowing out all sorts of ether into the moon to power Zodiark? If you have any other theories that I may not have thought of, please let me know down below. If you like this video, give it a big thumbs up. Otherwise, everyone, thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day. Bye!